My name is Heather Wilmer. I'm 21 years old. On my 21st birthday, Lindsay told our parents to cut off my education until I apologized to her. They agreed without looking at me. I said, "Fine." I went upstairs. I closed the door. At 11 p.m., my room was fully packed. My sister burst in. She screamed, "Retract what you sent, now!" My mother followed, white as paper. "Heather, what did you send?" What they didn't know, my grandmother had been watching. Before she died, she made one phone call. That phone call was about to take everything Lindsay had stolen and give it back with interest. That was the shape of my 21st birthday. Before we go further, I want to say one thing. If you've ever been the quiet one in a loud family, the one they called dramatic, the one whose wins got explained away, stay with me. This story takes turns. I promise every turn is earned. So let me take you back. Let me take you back to the living room of my parents' house on Benefit Street in Providence. There's a wall there. On that wall, my sister's diploma hangs in oak, her NYU acceptance letter, her magazine feature, her photo from the Iowa Writers Workshop open house, 5 frames in a tidy row, and 1 empty frame. My mother bought the empty frame when I was 12. She said it was for my first big moment. That was 9 years before my 21st birthday. The frame was still empty. My sister's name is Lindsay. She was 26 the night everything broke. She was born first, and in our house, that meant she was born right. My mother used to say Lindsay could write before she could walk. Then she'd smile and add, "Heather needed more time." I always wanted to ask, more time than what? But you don't ask in a house like ours. You learn the rhythm. You learn to nod. You learn to say your sister's essays are wonderful. You clap when she reads them at dinner. I clapped for 9 years. Here's what nobody in my family ever understood. I wasn't slow. I was watching. When I was 9, Lindsay won her first writing award, a state essay contest. The organizers invited both winners to read their pieces at a luncheon in Boston. Lindsay got stage fright the morning of. She threw up in the kitchen sink. She couldn't read. My mother had me memorize Lindsay's essay in 40 minutes. In the car. I read it on stage in front of 300 people. In Lindsay's voice. Nobody thanked me. My mother said on the drive home, "Heather is good at copying. Lindsay is the real writer." I was 9. I remember looking out the window and thinking, copying is not the same as saying something first. I started writing at 7. Poems first. Little scenes. Arguments I couldn't have out loud. I kept them in a notebook under my mattress. My grandmother was the only person who knew. My grandmother's name was Harriet Ashford. She was the loudest, sharpest, kindest woman I ever knew. She had published 2 novels in her 30s. She read everything I wrote, every single thing. From the time I was 8 years old. When I was 17, I wrote her a poem. It was called For My Grandmother's Hands, 14 lines. I gave it to her on her birthday. She read it once, then twice. Then she put the paper down. "You have it, child," she said. "Your voice is small now, but it is yours. Don't ever let anyone take it." I nodded. I didn't know what she meant. I understood 2 years later. My grandmother died in May of 2023. A stroke. Sudden. I was 19. The family gathered for the funeral. My mother gave a speech. My sister read one of Harriet's own poems at the podium. I sat in the back row. I didn't say anything. The morning after the funeral, my grandmother's attorney read the will out loud in the dining room. Trust fund, $240,000, split 50-50 between the 2 granddaughters, to be released at age 25, standard language. Nothing unusual. My mother signed the paperwork without reading it. "Mother kept it simple," she said. Of course she did. Nobody asked me anything. The attorney's name was Vivian Thorne. I saw her for maybe 3 minutes total. She shook my hand once. She did not say a word about any clauses. I forgot about her. Until she called me 31 months later. 3 months after the funeral, in August, I was in the library at Brown, flipping through a magazine called The Atlantic Voices, a small literary journal. I was killing time before a seminar. On page 34, I found my poem. The title had been changed. For My Grandmother's Silence. That was the first thing I noticed. My grandmother was never silent. Not one day of her life. The byline said Lindsay Wilmer. I read it 4 times. 14 lines. My lines. My grandmother's hands. My memory. Someone else's name at the bottom. I sat in that library for 20 minutes. I didn't move. Students walked past me. A security guard asked if I was okay. I said yes. I watched him walk away. Then I did something strange. I walked to the reference desk. I asked the librarian for the publication's editorial contact information. She printed it for me. 3 addresses, a phone number, a staff list. I folded the paper. I put it in my wallet. I kept it there for 2 years. Here's what I did next. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I didn't go home and throw a plate. I closed the magazine. I walked back to my dorm. I opened my laptop. I made a new folder. I named it Evidence_01. I pasted in the original poem. Timestamp, August 14th, 2023, 4:18 p.m. Then I made another folder. I renamed every file I had ever written, going back 3 years, every draft, every fragment, every email where I'd sent my writing to a friend or a professor. It took me 4 hours. When I was done, I sat on my bed. I looked at the ceiling. I thought about my grandmother saying, "Don't let anyone take it." That was the day I stopped being a sister. I became a witness, and I had no idea how long I would have to watch. I want to stop here for a second, because what happens next is a long road. I did not react. I did not confront Lindsay. I did not tell my mother. I did not post about it. I did not cry into my pillow. I planned. The women in my family were taught to be pleasant. My grandmother used to say that was our curse. She told me once, over tea, the women who survive this family are the ones who learn to build while everyone thinks they're sewing. So I built. In January of 2024, I signed up for a seminar at Brown with a professor named Nathaniel Croft. He was 61. He had published in the New Yorker, Granta, the Paris Review. He was not easily impressed. I didn't care about impressing him. I cared about learning to sharpen what I already had. 3 weeks into the semester, he asked me to stay after class. He sat behind his desk. He slid a copy of The Atlantic Voices across to me. August 2023 issue. Already open to page 34. "Have you ever published under another name?" he asked. I didn't breathe. He tapped the poem. "I've been reading your essays for 2 weeks. Then I read this again over the weekend. It's the same voice. Whose name is on it?" I told him everything in 48 minutes. He didn't interrupt once. When I was done, he took off his glasses. He rubbed his eyes. He said 4 words. "I know who you need to meet." Then he said one more thing. "Heather, I've taught for 34 years. I've seen this before. Twice. Once it went to court. Once it did not. The ones that went to court. The students did one thing the ones who settled didn't do." "What?" I asked. "They built their case for a year before anyone knew they were building." He handed me a legal pad. "Start with dates. Every date you can remember. Every file. Every conversation. Every time your sister was alone with your laptop. Every essay you turned in. Every time you showed her something. Don't trust your memory. Write it all down." I wrote for 2 hours after I left his office. By the time I stopped, I had 51 entries. going back to middle school. A week later, I was on a Zoom call with Professor Vivienne Holloway. Vivienne is the director of the Iowa Writers Workshop. She's 58, precise, warm when she wants to be, merciless when she needs to be. She had known Nathaniel since graduate school. He trusted her completely. On our first call, she asked me to share my Google Docs history. I did. She read silently for 20 minutes. Then she looked up. "Your sister applied to Iowa 6 months ago," she said. "Her writing sample is yours. Word for word. We were about to accept her. Give me a week." I couldn't speak. "Breathe, Heather. You're not crazy. You were right." A week later, Iowa put Lindsay's application on hold, indefinitely. Lindsay never knew. She told my mother she was on the short list. My mother bought a bottle of champagne for when the letter came. It never came. By the spring of 2024, I had 3 things I'd never had before: a witness with credentials, a top-tier graduate program willing to believe me, and something close to a plan. I also had Sophie. Sophie Ashworth was my best friend at Brown. We met freshman year in a playwriting class. Sophie was the kind of person who noticed what other people thought they were hiding. In December of 2023, Lindsay had visited our parents' house over the holidays. She borrowed my laptop one evening. Sophie was visiting too. She quietly took screenshots of the file names Lindsay was opening. At the time, Sophie didn't know why she took them. Something in the room felt wrong, she said later, and she'd learned to trust that feeling. Those screenshots sat in her phone for 8 months. When I finally asked to see them, she sent everyone inside an hour. Files from my drafts. Opened, copied, renamed. One file she had copied was called grandma_essay_draft_V3. I had written it the week before my grandmother's funeral. Lindsay had opened it the evening of December 23, 2023, 22 minutes after my grandmother's urn was first placed on the mantel. Sophie looked at me across her kitchen table in Pawtucket. "You should have told me a year ago. I didn't want to make you carry it." "I was already carrying it. You just weren't there to see." She poured me more tea. We sat for an hour. We didn't talk. I gave her a spare key to my dorm the next week. She gave me a spare key to her apartment. "Anytime," she said. Forever. I started using her address in September of 2024. I opened a P.O. box at Brown too. Every important piece of mail I expected would arrive at one of those 2 addresses. Never at my parents' house. Every important piece except one. I'll get to that. The other thing I started doing in the fall of 2024 was recording. Rhode Island is a one-party consent state. If you're part of a conversation, you can record it without telling the other people. I checked with a lawyer before I pressed record the first time. Carefully, twice. I ended up with 218 recordings over the next 13 months. One of them became the most important. April of 2024. I was home for Easter. Lindsay was in the living room, on the phone with an ex-boyfriend she was trying to get back. She thought I was upstairs. I was in the hallway. Phone in my hand. Microphone on. She said, "Heather never reads her own essays after submission. I borrow them. It's fine. She won't notice." Then she laughed. "She never does. Our mother thinks it's cute that she's oblivious." Then she said something else. Something I didn't use until months later. "Besides, Mom helped me workshop the last one. She doesn't think Heather is a real writer either. Mom said Heather just has a cute little hobby." I saved that file 3 separate times that night. I transcribed it the next morning. That was the moment I knew. My mother wasn't just blind. She was a co-author of the theft. I played that recording exactly once, a year later, in the office of a federal postal inspector. Nobody laughed then. By Christmas of 2024, I had a full scholarship offer to the Iowa Writers Workshop. I had a mentor who believed me. I had a friend hiding my mail. I had over 200 recordings. My sister thought I was fragile. I let her. I want to pause here for a second. If you're still with me, hit subscribe. I'm not going to ask you again, because the rest of this story gets heavy and I don't want to break the flow. Let's keep going. In February of 2025, Nathaniel Croft walked me across campus to a building I had never noticed, a small brass plaque on the door. Pro Bono Legal Clinic. He introduced me to Bradford Kellerman. 49. Gray beard. Soft voice. Intellectual property and federal mail fraud. He had the exact kind of calm that comes from winning a lot of cases quietly. He listened for 2 hours. He read through my evidence folders for another hour. Then he took off his glasses. He folded them on the desk. You have more documented evidence than most of my paying clients. How long have you been keeping this? 18 months, I said. Good. He asked me one more question before I left. Do your parents control your mail? I didn't answer fast enough. He wrote it down. He asked me another question I wasn't expecting. Has anything ever gone missing? Anything addressed to you? Ever. Even something small. I thought about it. I thought for a long time. When I was 16, I said. I applied to a summer writing workshop at Bread Loaf. I never heard back. My mother said they probably didn't have room. Kellerman wrote that down too. 3 weeks ago, I added, a brown envelope from Columbia University. I saw it on the hall table. It was gone the next morning. My mother said it was junk. Do you remember what the return address said? English Department, Office of Fellowships. He looked up. Heather, your mother has been intercepting your mail for years. He said it like a diagnosis. I said, I know. When did you know? Since I was 12. I just couldn't prove it until now. Between March and August of 2025, Kellerman drafted 4 formal complaints. 1 to the United States Postal Inspection Service, 1 to the Iowa Writers Workshop Plagiarism Committee, 1 to the Rhodes Trust Regional Office, 1 to the editorial board of Redwater Press, where Lindsay had just taken a junior editor job in Brooklyn. He loaded all 4 into an electronic escrow system. Only I had the password. Only I had the trigger. Nothing would leave his office unless I said so. We met every 6 weeks to update facts. Every document was dated. Every claim was sourced. Every receipt was tagged. In August, he sent me one message. Everything is loaded. You have the PIN. Press it only when you're ready to never go home again. I went home for a weekend in late August. I watched my mother sort the mail. I watched her open a brown logo envelope. Read it. Place it in the family file. Not mine. Hers. She didn't hand it to me. I didn't ask. I drove back to my dorm that night. I emailed Kellerman 3 words. I think you're right. Now, in May of 2025, a different letter had gone out. I hadn't told anyone about this one. Not Croft, not Holloway, not Sophie, not even Kellerman at first. Back in June of 2024, I had quietly submitted an application for the Rhodes Scholarship. Regional application, New England. I had asked Professor Croft to write one of my recommendation letters. He said yes, without hesitation. He didn't ask why I hadn't told my family. A year later, in May of 2025, I found out I had made it to the regional finalist round. The Rhodes Trust sent me a confirmation by email. They also sent a printed letter, by mail, to the address on my application. That address was my parents' house. Here's where I want to be honest with you, because you deserve it. I could have had the letter forwarded to Sophie's address. I could have asked for digital-only communication. I didn't. I let the letter go to my parents' house on purpose, because I needed to know what my mother would do with it. I needed it on record. Kellerman had told me, calmly, 6 weeks earlier, If you want the federal charge to stick, it cannot be hypothetical. There has to be a physical letter, a tracked letter, a letter they had to choose to take. So I let them choose. The letter was sent on a Tuesday in September 2025. According to USPS tracking, it was delivered on Thursday. My mother called Lindsay on Friday morning. I know because Sophie's neighbor lives across the street from my parents' house. That neighbor is Sophie's mother's old college roommate. She saw Lindsay's Honda pull into the driveway on Friday afternoon. She texted Sophie. Sophie texted me. Your sister came home 2 hours ago. She never comes home on a Friday. Then, on Saturday night, the neighbor texted again. Chimney's been going since 7. Who burns a fire in September? I drove home on Sunday. My mother hugged me at the door. She smelled like smoke. Welcome home, sweetie. Any mail for you this week? Nothing important. Just junk. I nodded. I went down to the basement. My father had a small fireplace there. He used it for what he called thinking nights. The grate was still warm. Inside, I found a small pile of ash. Fresh. I took a pair of tweezers from my father's toolkit. I knelt down. I gently lifted the pieces. One scrap hadn't burned. 2 centimeters by 3. One corner had the Rhodes Trust logo. Faint, but clear. The other side had 4 words, written in my mother's handwriting. Don't let her see this. Paige needs it more. Paige was Lindsay's childhood nickname. Only 3 people in the world still called her that. My mother was one of them. My hand did not shake. That surprised me. I had been expecting this moment for a year. I had just never imagined it would look this small. I went upstairs. I took 12 photos of that scrap from 12 different angles. I scanned it. I sent the scans to Kellerman at 1:14 a.m. I sent copies to Sophie, to a personal cloud my mother did not know existed. Kellerman replied in 4 minutes. This is your kill switch. When do we press it? I typed one date. October 22nd, my birthday. He wrote back. Understood. Happy early birthday, kid. I want you to imagine something. Imagine knowing the date your life will change. Imagine knowing who will be in the room. Imagine knowing what songs will be playing, what food will be on the table, which chair your father will sit in. Imagine getting to choose the time. I chose 10:45 p.m. Between the ashes in September and the dinner in October, I kept going home for weekends. I smiled. I talked to my father about the weather. I let my mother brag about Lindsay's new job at Redwater Press. I sat at dinner and ate pasta. One evening in early October, Lindsay came home for a visit. She told the whole family she had just been awarded a $25,000 grant from the National Endowment for the Arts. For the essays I've been working on, she said. My mother cried. My father poured champagne. I said, That's wonderful, Lindsay. Really? She looked at me for a second, looking for something. Resentment. Weakness. Anything she could use. I gave her nothing. She turned back to my parents and kept talking. In my bedroom that night, I added the NEA to my list. I was already packing. 2 days later, Lindsay's fiancé, Jonathan, came to the house for dinner. I had only met him twice. He was 29, an architect. He had kind eyes. He asked questions and actually listened to the answers. After dessert, I helped him carry plates to the kitchen. He looked at me and said, Your sister doesn't really talk about you much. No, I said. I imagine she wouldn't. He laughed. Then he stopped. Is there something I should know? I looked at him, fully, for the first time, and I said, Not from me, not yet. He held my gaze. He nodded. He put the plates in the sink. Then he said, When you're ready to tell me, you can find me. He handed me his business card. I put it in my wallet, behind the piece of paper with the Atlantic Voice's contact information. 3 weeks later, I would put his address on a manila envelope. On October 20th, 2025. I finished packing the last of 3 Navy Samsonite suitcases. I had bought them in July with my own debit card. Kept them in the back of my closet under old blankets. I had moved everything important into them in pieces over 2 months. Laptop, charger, passport, Iowa offer letter, printed. The green leather notebook my grandmother had given me, now holding the ash scrap in a plastic sleeve. The walnut box she had sealed with red wax, still unopened. A backup drive, my social security card, 3 suitcases, 1 life. On October 21st, I shipped a bigger box to Sophie. I labeled it, "Forward to Iowa on October 23rd. She confirmed it in the afternoon. I also mailed 2 other packages that day. One went to Celeste Beaumont, editor-in-chief at Redwater Press, her office address, marked confidential. One went to Jonathan Merritt, no return address, marked personal. I did not open those packages in front of anyone, not even Sophie. Kellerman had warned me. Once those go out, you have 48 hours before the story writes itself. I booked an Uber for 11:30 p.m. on October 22nd. Destination: Sophie's apartment. My flight to Iowa City was the next afternoon. I went to sleep that night the way people go to sleep before surgery. Not peaceful, not afraid, just ready. October 22nd, 6 p.m. My mother made a roast chicken. My father poured wine. Lindsay arrived 15 minutes late and did not say hello to me. My mother brought out a cake at 7. Vanilla. She still did not know I hated vanilla. 21 candles. I blew them out. I didn't make a wish. 21, Heather, my mother said. It feels like yesterday. It feels like a long time to me, actually. That was the first edge. Lindsay put her fork down. She cleared her throat. Before we do gifts, I need to bring something up. My father didn't look at her. He didn't look at anyone. He kept stirring his coffee, round and round, with a small silver spoon. Heather has been saying things about me, to her professors, to people at Iowa. I don't know where she's getting it, but it's hurting my career. I've tried to handle this quietly. It isn't working. My mother turned toward me. Is this true? I didn't answer. Lindsay kept going. She needs to publicly apologize, or there need to be consequences. I'm tired of being dragged into her drama. Douglas? My mother said. What do you think? My father stirred his coffee. Whatever you think is best, Charlotte. My mother turned fully toward me. Heather, we need to cut off your tuition until you apologize to your sister. It's for your own growth. You cannot keep doing this to our family. 3 faces across the table, none of them looking at me. My mother was looking at Lindsay. Lindsay was looking at my mother. My father was looking at his coffee. Not one of them looked at me. I said one word. Fine. My mother blinked. That's it? No argument? No. Lindsay frowned. She had expected me to fight. She needed me to fight. She wanted to win a visible argument. I wasn't going to give her one. I stood up. I walked out of the dining room. I went up the stairs. 17 steps. I counted them. I had been counting those stairs since I was 5 years old. I closed my bedroom door. I locked it. I sat on my bed. I looked at my phone. 7:42 p.m. 3 hours and 3 minutes until 11. I opened my laptop. Everything was already staged. All I had to do was wait. I texted Sophie. T-3 hours. She wrote back. Couch is ready. So is everything else. I love you. Thank you for the last 18 months. Thank yourself. You got this. I spent the next 2 hours doing very small things. I wiped the top of my dresser. I folded a blanket. I made the bed. I placed the walnut box on top of my laptop bag. Still sealed. Still waiting. I touched the green notebook with the ash scrap inside. One last time, just to make sure it was there. Downstairs I could hear them talking. My mother's voice. Low. Planning. Lindsay's voice. Rising. My father's silence. At 9:22 p.m., I heard Lindsay on the phone with Jonathan. "Baby, please call me back. Mom and I are handling a thing with Heather. I need to know you support me." He did not call her back. He had already opened the envelope I mailed him on October 21st. Then, at 10:40 p.m., I sat on my suitcase. I opened my laptop. I typed an email to Kellerman. Subject, press it. Body. Now. I sent it. At 10:46 p.m., Kellerman replied. Sent. USPS Iowa. Roads. Redwater. All 4. Godspeed, kid. At 10:47, my phone buzzed. A forwarded email. Iowa Writers Workshop Ethics Committee. Subject line, formal inquiry, plagiarism allegation, immediate response required. Sent to my sister. Copied to me. Because I was the complainant. At 10:50 p.m., a second buzz. Rhodes Trust. At 10:51, Redwater Press. At 10:52, the USPS Inspection Service. At 10:52 p.m., I heard my sister scream from downstairs. It was the kind of scream that made the floor shake. I closed my laptop. I looked at the door. I counted to 6. Lindsay came up the stairs like a wave. My door shook. Not a knock, a kick. She kicked it twice. I unlocked it. She shoved it open so hard it bounced off the wall. She stepped in. She saw 3 suitcases against the wall. She saw my laptop on the bed. She saw me. Her face was white. "Retract what you sent, now." I didn't answer. "Retract what you sent. Now." My mother came up the stairs behind her. She stopped in the doorway. Her hand went to her chest. "Heather," she said, "what did you send?" I opened the laptop. I turned the screen toward her. 4 subject lines, all delivered in the last 7 minutes. United States Postal Inspection Service. Federal investigation opened. Mail fraud allegation. Iowa Writers Workshop Ethics Committee. Formal inquiry. Plagiarism. Rhodes Trust New England. Confirmation of active finalist status. Heather Wilmer. Redwater Press Editorial Ethics. Urgent review. Lindsay Wilmer. Writing samples. My mother read the first one. Her knees gave out. She went down slowly, the way a building comes down after the supports are already gone. She ended up sitting on the floor in the doorway of my childhood bedroom. Lindsay grabbed her phone. She dialed. She put it to her ear. She was shaking so hard she had to hold the phone with both hands. Jonathan, please. Something's happened. Please call me back." She called 3 times. He didn't answer any of them. She didn't know yet. He had stopped answering 3 hours earlier. Downstairs, I could see my father through the hallway. He was still in his chair. He was looking at the floor. He hadn't moved. He knew. He had known for a long time. "There's nothing to retract," I said. I kept my voice low. "It's been sent. It's federal. It's not mine anymore." My mother looked up from the floor. Her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying yet. She was still in shock. "Heather, please. We can fix this. We can talk. We're your family." "There's no we," I said. "I'm your mother. You were my mother when I was 7. You stopped." She made a sound then. Something small and dry, like paper tearing. I picked up the first suitcase. Lindsay tried to block the doorway. I stepped around her. She grabbed my arm. "You can't do this to me. You don't know what this will do to me." I looked at her hand on my arm. I looked at her face. Her mascara had run. Her mouth was open. She looked, for the first time in my life, younger than me. "I understand exactly what it will do," I said. "That's why I did it." She let go. I carried the first suitcase down the stairs, then the second, then the third. I made 3 trips. Nobody helped me. Nobody stopped me. My father didn't move from his chair once. On the last trip, I paused beside him. I looked at the side of his face. Dad. He didn't turn. Dad, look at me. He didn't. I kept walking. At 11:30 p.m., the Uber pulled into the driveway. My mother followed me to the front door. Her hair had come loose. Her voice was breaking. Heather, please. Where will you sleep tonight? I turned. I looked at her. I had waited 21 years for her to ask me a question like that. Somewhere I should have gone a long time ago. I walked out. Lindsay ran into the driveway in her socks. She was screaming my name. The driver loaded my suitcases without a word. He glanced at her once. He glanced at me. Ma'am, should I wait? No. Please drive. I got in. I closed the door. The car pulled out of the driveway. My sister was still screaming in the yard. My mother was on the floor in the hallway. My father was staring at nothing. I did not look back. I had been looking back for 21 years. I was done. I woke up the next morning on Sophie's couch in Pawtucket. She made coffee. She handed me a mug. She sat down next to me without saying anything. I checked my phone. 53 missed calls. 31 texts. I read 3 of the texts. Then I blocked every number in my family. One text was from a number I did not recognize. 6 words. I got the envelope, thank you. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I saved the number under a new contact name, J.M. I blocked it too, not in anger, in closure. My email had one message, from Kellerman, sent at 6:42 a.m. They're awake now. Stay off social media. Talk to no one except me. Iowa wants to schedule your orientation. You're safe. Sophie finally spoke. What do you want for breakfast? Anything that isn't vanilla. She laughed. I laughed. It was the first time I had laughed in a year. I flew to Iowa City the next afternoon. Professor Holloway met me at the arrivals gate. She didn't say anything profound. She just took one of my suitcases. She said, "Let's get you home." And she walked me to her car. Home. That was the first time in my life anyone had used that word to mean a place where I could rest. The collapse started 6 days later. On the following Monday, Celeste Beaumont called Lindsay into her office. Celeste was the editor-in-chief at Redwater Press. The HR manager was already waiting. Celeste slid a folder across the desk. "Bring your building ID," she said. "Clean out your desk. You have 30 minutes." Lindsay had been at Redwater for 11 months. She had received an $18,000 signing bonus, based on writing samples she had not written. Those same samples had appeared, word for word, in my Google Docs 2 years earlier. Redwater's legal team sent Lindsay a formal clawback demand the same afternoon. Her literary agent dropped her by the end of the week. The agent also demanded the return of a $7,500 advance. The Association of American Publishers added her name to a confidential do not hire list on Friday. By the end of the week, Lindsay had no job and no future in publishing. Not for a year. Not for 5 years. Forever. That was Tier 1. The next Tuesday, Iowa's registrar sent her a formal notice of candidacy termination. $28,500 in stipend money, due back in 60 days. Failure to comply would result in civil action. On November 5th, the National Endowment for the Arts sent her a rescission letter. $25,000 in grant funds to be returned, plus $3,200 in legal processing fees. On November 12th, the Atlantic Voices posted a public correction online. The magazine listed the original poem, the original author, a brief apology. Authorship disputed. Original author identified as Heather Wilmer. The publishing industry in New York saw the correction by noon. By evening, a literary magazine in Boston had quietly pulled a second essay Lindsay had submitted. By the end of the week, there wasn't a single editor in Manhattan who didn't know. Tier 2. On November 8th, a package arrived at Jonathan Merritt's apartment in Brooklyn. Jonathan was Lindsay's fiancé. He was 29, an architect. He had kind eyes. He had proposed to Lindsay 6 months earlier. The package had no return address, but it was actually the second envelope I had sent him. The first arrived on October 23rd. This one contained more. Inside was a folder of evidence and a USB drive. On the drive was a single audio file, 11 minutes long. Lindsay, bragging to a friend about him. He thinks I'm brilliant. He has no idea. Jonathan listened. He stopped the file halfway through. He drove to New Haven that night to see his parents. He came back 3 days later. He drove to Lindsay's apartment. He did not ring the bell. He stood at the door. "The ring," he said. "Now." She opened it. She had been crying for a week. Her face was hollow. "Jonathan, please let me explain. The ring. Now." She took it off. She placed it in his palm. He closed his hand. He turned. He walked down the stairs. He did not look back. 2 days later, his lawyer filed a small claims case in Rhode Island to formally recover the ring. $11,200. Jonathan never spoke to Lindsay again. She sent him letters for 3 months. He returned every single one, unopened. He was the only thing she had ever wanted that she could not steal. Tier 3. On November 15th, a federal postal inspector named Darren Fitzgerald visited my parents' house. Lindsay had moved back into her childhood bedroom 2 weeks earlier. She couldn't afford her Brooklyn rent anymore. Fitzgerald was calm, badge out, polite. "Ms. Wilmer, intercepting mail containing a Rhodes Scholarship notification is a federal offense under 18 U.S.C. Section 1708. He left a business card and a summons. My father had to hire a criminal defense attorney. It cost him $31,000 in retainer. On November 20th, Lindsay accepted a plea deal. Federal misdemeanor, no trial, no prison, 500 hours of community service, 3 years of probation, $8,000 in fines, a permanent federal criminal record, a 5-year ban on travel to the United Kingdom and Canada. On November 28th, NYU conducted a retroactive audit of her bachelor's thesis. They found 2 chapters that contained language traced to essays I had written when I was 15 years old. 15. I wasn't even in high school yet. NYU revoked her bachelor's degree. At 26, my sister no longer had a college degree. Tier 4. On November 25th, my mother was asked to resign her partnership at Hawthorne and Beck. She had worked there for 16 years. The Rhode Island bar opened an ethics inquiry into her role in the mail fraud. Her license was suspended for 2 years. Her senior partner, a man named Henry Beck, drove to her house the evening of her resignation. I learned this later. He sat in his car in the driveway for 20 minutes. Then he drove away without getting out. Her name came off the firm's website the next morning. Her biography. Her photograph. Her cases. Gone. 16 years deleted by a web administrator in under 15 minutes. My father took early retirement on December 1st. He was 58. He had planned to work until 65. He started writing me letters. 1 a week. He wrote them by hand. He sent them to Sophie's address. Sophie forwarded them to Iowa City. I never opened a single one. I kept them in a box in the hall closet of my apartment. The box is still there. I'm not ready to read them yet. Maybe one day. Not this year. Tier 5. On December 8th, I flew to Boston for my Rhodes Regional interview. I wore a plain blouse, pressed slacks. I answered every question they asked me. I talked about my grandmother, without saying her name. I talked about voice. I talked about what it meant to have to prove you were the author of your own mind. One of the panelists asked me what I had learned in the last 2 years. I thought about it. Then I said, that silence is a strategy, not a condition. Nobody spoke for 6 seconds. I counted. A week later, on December 15th, I received an email from Dr. Malcolm Fairbanks, the regional chair. I was not chosen as a Rhodes Scholar. I had been selected as a Rhodes Scholar honorable mention. That means my name went into the final round's official record as a finalist worthy of distinction. Not a winner. Not exactly a loss. A quiet recognition. I sat with the email for 20 minutes in my kitchen in Iowa City. I did not cry. I did not call anyone. I made tea. I thought about my grandmother. I thought about what she used to say about almost. The hardest kind of peace is the peace you make with almost. Then I thought about my sister. On December 17th, the Providence Journal ran a short article, 3 paragraphs. Local student named Rhodes honorable mention. Amid federal mail fraud case involving family, my sister read it in our parents' kitchen. Here's the part I want you to really hear, because this is the part that broke her. It broke her because she finally understood what I had already known. She had burned the letter. She had committed federal mail fraud. She had lost her job, her degree, her fiancé, her reputation, her freedom, in every real sense. She had burned a letter to prevent a result. The result was never going to happen. I wasn't going to win the Rhodes. She had burned a letter to stop nothing. She had lost her entire life to prevent a thing that was never going to happen. 2 days later, on December 19th, my sister checked herself into Silver Hill Hospital in Connecticut. She walked in alone. The nurse who admitted her told me later that when Lindsay handed over her wallet at intake, she was still holding a folded newspaper in her other hand. The Providence Journal article from December 17th. The nurse had to pry it gently out of her fingers. Lindsay said only one thing at intake, according to the nurse. She repeated it twice. It didn't even matter. It didn't even matter. That is what dark irony looks like when it lands. Not a bang. A hand that won't let go of a piece of paper. On December 20th, at 9 in the morning, my phone rang. The voice on the other end was warm, older, steady. Heather, this is Vivian Thorne. I was your grandmother's attorney. I'm calling because a clause in her trust just activated, and I need to speak with you about it. I sat down at my kitchen table. Your grandmother rewrote her will in March of 2023, 2 months before she passed. She added what we call a morality clause. It states that if either of her granddaughters is convicted of fraud or a federal crime involving dishonesty before the age of 30, that granddaughter's share of the trust transfers to the other. She paused. The full $120,000 is yours. It will be deposited into the account on file by end of business on the 22nd. I couldn't speak. There's one more thing she wanted me to tell you. She asked me to read the clause back to her 3 times. She wanted to make sure I understood exactly who it was protecting. I asked her who. She said your name. She spelled it. When did she start to suspect? I asked. January of 2022. She found one of your short stories on your sister's NYU course page, under your sister's name. She called me the next week. 2 years before I even knew. My grandmother had been building a shield for me 2 years before I knew I would need one. Heather, there's one more thing, Vivian said. Your grandmother left you a message. She asked me to deliver it verbally, not in writing. I held the phone tighter. She said, and these are her words. Tell her the box is not a gift. It is a handoff. Tell her the book waits for her, but only her. I thanked Vivian. I hung up. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. The snow had started outside. I walked to the closet. I took out the walnut box. It had been sealed for 29 months. The red wax still showed her initials. H.A. to H.W. I broke the seal. Inside were 4 things. 1. A stack of manuscript pages, 187 of them, typed on her old Smith Corona, unfinished. The title she had penciled at the top read, The Ashford Women. 2. A Mont Blanc fountain pen. Her pen. Black. Gold nib. Still had ink. 3. A string of small freshwater pearls. 4. A 4-page handwritten letter, dated May 5th, 2023. I read the letter. She had written it 2 weeks before she died. Heather, if you are reading this, you are 21, and I am gone, and they have hurt you. I knew they would. I have known since you were 7 years old, and your mother stopped looking at you the same way. I tried to protect you while I was alive, by being the only one in that house who saw you clearly. Now, I have to protect you after. I left you half of everything, but I wrote a clause that none of them know about. Your sister will try to take what is yours. She may already have. When she is caught, her share becomes yours. That is my final gift. My other gift is this book. I could not finish it. My hands gave out. Finish it for me. Sign your own name this time. Do not be afraid to be the author of anything, ever again. Your voice is a fire, child. Nobody can burn it. It is inside you, not on paper. Now go live, write everything. Love, Grandma H. I sat with that letter for over an hour. Then I picked up her pen. I uncapped a blank notebook. I wrote 3 words at the top of the first page. The Quiet Architect. Then I started writing. Here's what I did with the money. $95,000 went into a small apartment in Iowa City. Cash. No mortgage. No loan. No bank between me and my front door. Ever again. $25,000 went into a new scholarship at Brown, the Harriet Ashford Literary Scholarship, for one woman writer a year from a family that tried to silence her. The first recipient would be selected the following spring. I would not be on the committee. I would not know her name. That was the point. I wrote for 6 weeks. 8,400 words. A short story. It wasn't about my sister. It wasn't about my mother. It wasn't revenge. I didn't need revenge anymore. I had something better. I had my voice. And I had every hour of every day to use it however I wanted. The story was about a girl who builds a house out of paper. Everyone tells her the house will burn. She builds it anyway. When it burns, she realizes the house was never the point. The building was. I finished the draft on December 20th. I revised for 2 days. On the second Monday of December, I submitted it to the New Yorker. Fiction portal. Cover letter. 3 sentences. I did not mention my last name. I did not mention my family. I did not mention anything except the work. On December 23rd at 9:17 p.m., my laptop chimed. An email from a fiction editor named Janet Nolan. Subject: regarding your submission, The Quiet Architect. Body: Ms. Wilmer. We'd like to discuss this piece with you after the holidays. Please reply at your convenience in January. I read the email. I didn't open the reply. Not that night. I would. In January. But that night, I wanted to sit with the fact that I had written something. Under my own name. With my own voice. For the first time in my life. Nobody was going to read it before I was ready for them to. I closed the laptop. I went into the kitchen. I boiled water. I pulled out an Earl Grey tea bag, the kind my grandmother had drunk every morning for 60 years. I carried the mug to the window. I sat on the ledge. The snow was falling on an empty street in Iowa City. It was falling on a street my grandmother had never seen. It was falling on a life she had built for me, quietly, before I ever knew I would need it. My sister was in Silver Hill. My mother was suspended. My father was writing letters to an address I had not given him, hoping someone would forward them to me. Someone did. I had not opened any of them. I would. In a year. Maybe longer. Tonight, there was only me. A cup of tea. a pen on the desk that had belonged to a woman who knew my voice before I did, and 187 pages of a book that was waiting to be finished. I watched the snow. My name was on everything I had written. Hers would be on the book I was going to finish. And that was enough. That was more than enough. If you made it this far, I want to say one thing before I go. The quietest people in your life are not weak. They are often the ones keeping the evidence. They are often the ones doing the work nobody sees. If that is you, I want you to know. Your grandmother, or your mentor, or your friend, is probably building something for you, right now, quietly, while no one is watching. Let them. And when your time comes, build back. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next story.